Sachs is the director of the Earth Institute at Columbia University. He has been an advisor to Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, Secretary General Kofi Annan, and multiple leaders, world leaders, presidents and prime ministers from all parts of the planet. He is the acknowledged expert on development economics and the goals, the Millennium Development Goals agreed upon to reduce extreme poverty, disease, and hunger. Professor Sachs has been president and co-founder of the Millennium Promise Alliance, the organization, the nonprofit organization aimed at ending global poverty. He is a speaker and a writer on many occasions. His honors and honorary degrees are too numerous to count, and his numerous books as well, including the last one called The End of Poverty, which became...
This is exciting for me and fun. And I want to thank the UN Association and the Mid-Atlantic Conference for inviting me. And I want to thank Dillian for introducing me. It's a special thrill on many points. I hope all of you in the room have some shivers being in this chamber, because this is just one of the greatest places on the whole planet, and one of the most important places. And all of you are sitting in seats where famous heads of state gave their speeches and deliberated on the world's greatest problems, exactly where you are today. And I have the privilege of being at a podium where some important words were uttered. And of course, when Dillian introduces me, I think to what I regard as the greatest words uttered in this chamber. In 1961, when he said, "For man holds in his mortal hands the power to abolish all forms of human poverty and all forms of human life." He was referring to the nuclear threat. Now we have the environmental threat as well. But what a paradox we live in and that we face, because we can do absolutely miraculous things on the planet. We can end diseases. We can bring new technologies to the service of everybody on this planet. We can make the information age serve the information needs of the 7 billion people on the planet. It is a truism, but even though it's a truism, it also happens to be true in this case. So cliches are sometimes true. And this one is that we live in an interconnected world. You all know the butterfly effect, where the flapping of the wings of a butterfly in one part of the world, because of the non-linear interconnected dynamics of the world, can set off a tornado or a hurricane in another part of the world. That's the kind of world we have right now. Every place is interconnected. Every crisis can spread. Every good idea can spread. We went from 11 million cell phones in 1990 to 6 billion mobile subscribers today. That's the good side of the world. And when you're out there with your phones tweeting, tweet away, it's astounding how fast things can spread for the good. But we know that on the other hand, what can spread for the bad is disease, terror, money laundering, violence, forced migration, devastation, environmental destruction. And so those interconnections are absolutely real. They're not a cliche. The world economy is being rebalanced from what was a preserve of a few rich countries to a much, much wider prosperity. This is wonderful. The rapid growth of the emerging economies led by China is unprecedented in history, the pace that is happening. China was about 2% of the world economy in 1980. It's something around 11% of the world economy today, about 4, actually 12 to 14%. It will be bigger than the U.S. economy shortly. And this is something that's happened before our eyes, changing. The world is changing geopolitics. There's a lot of good in this, in that it means the spread of well-being and prosperity is potential to reach everybody. But the world's also unprecedentedly crowded, of course. It's not just interconnected, but there are now 7 billion of us, according to the UN Population Division clock that's kept. The 7 millionth person arrived on October 31st, Halloween, trick or treat. And what's stunning is that was just 12 years after the 6 billionth person had arrived. And because we're adding 75 to 80 million people per year, it's expected that the 8 billionth person will arrive around 2024. And the 9 billion, 2044. And the 10 billion in the second half of the 21st century. Of course, these are trends. They're not deterministic. It depends whether the ability to choose, whether women's rights, whether access to family planning services, whether girls' education takes hold, because then people will choose to have smaller families, the population will stabilize, incomes will rise per person faster, environmental threats will diminish. But that all depends on empowering girls and women, enabling girls to stay in school, enabling choice to be had everywhere about family size and access to contraception and family planning. The risks we face are extraordinary, unprecedented, not well understood, even scientifically only being glimpsed at for the first time in a way. When President Kennedy spoke about the power to abolish all forms of human life, he was referring mainly to the nuclear threat. Today, he would add the environmental risks that are profound. The fact that we're exceeding planetary boundaries in greenhouse gas emissions, in the destruction of biodiversity, in the loss and extinction of other forms of life, which are not only a horrendous moral failing, but a very practical risk for us in the food supplies and in the life support systems of the planet. In our country, half the people don't even believe in human-induced climate change. And that's not because they're dumb. It's because they're subjected to relentless corporate propaganda. So it's truth versus Coke Industries. It's truth versus ExxonMobil. It's truth versus lots of money. Hands down, truth will win, as long as we help to make sure that the truth is told and that science is respected and that people hear the realities. And the fourth reality of our time is shared responsibility. There is a kind of myth among a small part of the American public opinion and American politics, a kind of chest-beating nationalism that says we can do it all ourselves, most powerful country in the world. I think we've seen what that kind of thinking gets us into. The traps, the bleeding of lives and money in useless wars, in huge mistakes, in the cost of arrogance and hubris. We are a diminishing share of the world economy. We face powerful actors around the world. We face global problems that we could never solve by ourselves. Even if the U.S. did everything right on climate change, and it's done very little right on climate change, almost nothing, But even if it did everything right, it wouldn't matter anymore if China and India and other major countries do not do their part. And so we face inherently shared responsibilities. We face inherently the need to sit down together and divvy up the responsibilities, to say that there are global public goods that need to be shared. The U.S. isn't in a mood to do it by itself, couldn't even do it, sometimes says doesn't want to do anything anymore. It's feeling a little bit wounded by all these other competitors around. But the fact of the matter is this is exactly the place where this business needs to be accomplished. We have a wonderful Secretary General of the United Nations. We've been blessed with some fabulous leaders of this organization. I've had the profound honor to work closely with two of them, the preceding Secretary General, Kofi Annan, and the current Secretary General, Ban Ki-moon. These are outstanding global figures, outstanding statesmen, people who work round the clock, I can tell you, basically relentlessly, day in, day out, every hour of the day, to try to address an unbelievable range of global problems that all come through their office. And I have learned by being close by just how many problems there are, more than you can name. There are 193 member governments. They all have problems that find their way to the Secretary General. And so many conflicts, so many misunderstandings, so many changes in this crowded, rapidly changing, interconnected, stressed world. Secretary General put forward a powerful 5-point set of priorities for his second term, which has started just at the beginning of this year. And we are very lucky to have him as Secretary General and to have this second term ahead. The 5 points that he emphasized are, first, sustainable development. That means living together prosperously in a crowded world without destroying the planet in the process by overusing our natural resources or wrecking the climate. I do believe for young people here that sustainable development will be the great theme and challenge for your generation. It's inescapable to face the problem of how to combine the quest for economic improvement with sustainability of the world's core ecosystems. It's an unsolved problem. I teach it day in, day out at Columbia University, and I tell the students I can't give you any answers. We've never been through this before. I can only help to understand what the problems are and what some pathways may be.